cue the intro. All right, everyone. Hello and welcome to another Wheel Tapping. I'm one of your hosts, Chris Whiphand, and we are here for our December 2020 episode, and we are talking about 18FL. And so that's Florida, for those of you who may not know what FL means. And Tony and I kind of decided, you could probably tell by the description, we're going to go old school. We're going to go just him and me. How we doing, Tony?
Hey, buddy. I'm doing great, bud.
Yeah. So it's not that crazy that we're doing this by ourselves because, frankly, you know, David talked about it a little bit in his episode, so it didn't seem like it made sense to bring him back on just to talk about the Stringbean map, as it were, that he liked to say. So, you know, I thought we could, kind of end the year with a nice kind of classic. We've done a lot of special episodes the last few months, and I'm like, let's get back to the roots.
Just me and you.
Yeah, let's go Ponce de Leon on this thing, and let's find Florida, right?
Oh, okay. Good one.
You like that? You like that?
I do.
Like, let's go find the fountain of youth that lives in Florida.
I could use a fountain of youth, man.
It might be around Orlando or something like that. So we are talking about 18FL. So some of the quick highlights of 18FL. It's designed by the aforementioned David Hecht in 2006. It's been put out by Deep Thought and Golden Spike Games, and it's still in their catalog. So if it's a game that might interest you, we're gonna hold back and not let you know if it should interest you or not. We're gonna let you know. We're gonna make you listen a little longer. You can get in the queue for those. The play count says it plays 2 to 4. We played it recently at 3, and I really like that player count for this game. Seemed to hum nicely there, and it takes about 2 to 2.5 hours. And I think our recent plays of it, we're clocking in around the 2-hour mark. So
yeah. That 3-player session you mentioned just ended like 25 minutes ago.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm happy because I actually came out on top with and yes, yeah. Kelly was in the mix. He was making a charge at the end there. He really was. So
absolutely. I fell from first to second to third during the course of that game.
Yeah, just some rough tokens on you, I think, on that one. They kind of held you back. But, it is a nice, tight little map. Let me pull it up so, you at home can kind of see it. It's shaped exactly like the panhandle is there. It's got the nice, long, thin row across the top. But it also has a thin row that shoots out the bottom that represents the Keys and off to Havana. So it's, there's a lot of meat in the center, but it's narrow. It's very narrow. So, but it's definitely a lot of fun. Why don't we start this off with our initial auction? So the initial auction, if we have an interview, we talk about the game itself, and we like to kind of tell you if there are any rules or any huge MacGuffins to this version over, say, common baseline games like, say 30 or something like that. So Tony, why don't you walk us through what's kind of quirky and fun about this? Because there's a couple things.
There are. The first thing is that the initial distribution of private companies is a little bit different in that the players all bid for turn order.
Oh yeah, certainly.
Only bid up to $10, right? So like 0, 5, 10. And then you redistribute turn order, and then everybody will purchase exactly one private company because the game comes with 4, but you only use a number of companies equal to the player count. So in a 3-player game, you only use private companies numbered 1, 2, and 3. Number 4 is not in the game, etc.
Yeah, and the privates they're pretty standard privates. You have a port which operates like port/mail contract. All the cities, the major cities except for Orlando, and I think one other one, I want to say Fort Lauderdale, is actually on the coast, so they can get a token right away. And then the other one was it was a teleporter that you can just kind of zap anywhere and drop a token. And tokens get expensive, so that can be
tokens do get expensive. And that private, you can jam that token in.
Yeah.
Even if there's no room, because it never actually takes a space. It's just rides sidecar.
And any city, with the exception of Jacksonville, only ever goes to a 2-hole city. So the token fight is legit in this game. And more on that later, because there's something very cool. The tokens, they play a very significant part in this game. And I would argue my recent victory was, due to some revenues based on that. So we can kind of get into that. There's also, I think, the last private that, there's a 20% share that comes in the fourth one that was not in our game as well. But the first private, the cheapest one, is interesting because it gives you an extra tile lay, a yellow tile lay, which can be very handy.
Absolutely.
You do to a set, but it can be very handy. But it gives you first crack at the stock round, which that I opted for that one because I wanted to try a new company I hadn't tried before. So, my bid got me second choice, and the teleporter went first. It usually happens. And then
Kelly went for that.
Yep, and that was kind of potentially one of my first choices, but I'm like, you know what? I really want to run the seaboard, so that's why I'm like, it always opens early, so I went and grabbed it. Yeah, and then I had priority for 5 stock rounds, which not a function of that, but it just happened. So very, very cool little trick, and I don't know. Sometimes I think it's easier to hold on to priority when you already have it, because you can kind of at least do something and then get out and then kind of wait. So I think it kind of gives you a little bit of an advantage to have it early, because I think you can hold on to it a little deeper than in a lot of other games, which allowed me to open the second company I wanted to open first choice, which was great.
Yeah. But, in this game, those first few stock rounds, unless somebody sells something they have,
right,
you're pretty much going to just make enough money to buy one more thing. So if you go in with priority and everybody just does one thing, you're coming out with it too.
Exactly. The other cool thing is that it's a 5-share company game. All your companies start with 5 shares. So, it's very easy to kind of get a company up and running with not a ton of money, and you can instantly start doing things right away. Which I think is pretty cool. I like the grow up mechanic, and then when you decide to grow up, you just decide anytime after phase 3, and then poof, you get the rest of your treasury, which is, you time it right so that you can have a good value, so that you can get enough money from that infusion to buy a permanent train, which I think is
because
cool.
when you grow up, you get 5 times whatever your current value is. So
right.
Hopefully that's more than the initial value you started.
Unless people sell down your shares right before you want to grow up, in which case, you take a little hit. But I mean, it's usually like a $50, but if it happens twice, it could be $100 that you could be down, which could be crucial at the right moment. So, the other MacGuffins, there's a couple events that happen in the game. We'll talk a little bit more about the big one later. That has to deal with getting to Havana. But there's also, at some point, all these have to grow up, and that's on the 5 train. So all of the companies that were 5s are forced to grow up, and then any new companies that might happen after that are automatically started as a 10 share. So.
Hey, do you know how many plays you've got of this game? Today was my 8th play.
So this is going to fall in that ballpark of, this is the first game that you and I are talking about that I have played exclusively online. So I've got 4 plays of this one in, including today's, and all of them have been online. Although that isn't to say,
I think half of mine are online. I'll bet you your 4 and 4 of my online are the same.
I believe they are. No doubt.
We've played it several times, but we won't say why yet.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that should tell you something, because we don't. I'll be honest with you. We're not ones to sit there and play a game 4 times just because we have to review it. That's not our style. Yeah. We don't review games, but right. B, it's, if we don't like a game, we're just not going to play it. Doesn't happen very often. All right. So I think that's pretty much it. I think everything else we'll kind of save for the individual things. We're going to kind of, this, again, it's not a huge game, but there's some stuff here that's a lot of fun to talk about. And it seems like these the school night games are kind of the rage right now, because they're very easy to get played. They're very accessible online. They're not super rules intensive. You can get the board state very quickly if you're playing it, play by mail. So, they have a lot of advantages. And hopefully this one might see a reprint, because I think that there's some good stuff in it. All right, so let's get on to the yellow phase, where we talk about the map and the stock market. So, Tony, I just talked a bunch, and I need some more coffee, so I'm gonna let you kind of break into this one.
That map, right? Like this kind of zoomed out Florida. What do you call it? Stringbean or something?
It's the Stringbean.
Stringbean. When I first saw this map, I was like, "Oh man, that looks really cool!" Just because it's so odd. It's shaped like this. There's only one row across much of the Panhandle. Look at the peninsular part of Florida. At the widest part, it's 4 hexes wide. Right?
It is. It varies between 4 to 3 hexes, and there's just one solid row of looks to be about 9 or 10 across the top. It's small.
To me, the map just looks so tight and so cool. Right? Maybe some opportunities to, impede each other's progress a little bit, shall we say, here and there.
I definitely think so. Yeah.
Yeah, this is what grabbed my attention to this game, is this map. I just think it's really cool.
And then you also look down the bottom half of this map, and where the Everglades are represented, and there's a couple cannot cross borders, and there is a ton of trees and things and they're expensive. They're $40 hexes. So again, we'll circle back around to things cost a little bit, but
down there,
yeah, for sure. For sure.
Those in those swampy, foresty tree areas there, some of those are desirable hexes for building workarounds. So yes, you're going to be building some of those, right?
Yeah, you will. You might not build them like out of the gate, but again, given that every city is a 2-hole city, you're going to need to have some alternate track runs, especially if you want to run some of the bigger trains. And when I say big here, people, we're talking 4Ts and 5Ts. They're the big trains. You can get a 6 down the road, but good luck finding every stop for that without taking a couple cheapies in the way. It's tight. Those of you at home, I'm actually I'm gonna show the map here, and we're gonna zoom in on the keys. Right, look at that.
Wicked cool.
There you go. We got the technology.
You see, Havana's worth 60 the first half of the game and 100 the last half of the game. But to get there, you got to build 2 $80 tiles, right?
Yep, you got to build that bridge, Route 1, that runs down there. It's literally the full cost from Miami to there is 40, 80, 80. It's 200.
Yeah, $200.
Just that's a 3 train to get down there. Literally.
It is. At the beginning of the game, let's say you started that Florida East Coast company at 100, so you got $500 in it. Now you're spending 200 if you want to head that way.
Yep. And then just to add insult to injury, the only way to get to the Keys in Havana is via Miami. Because there is a cannot cross border line right here. That can be tough to see, but that's means all roads go through Miami if you want to get that big money.
So, but tell them about the Labor Day hurricane of 1935.
I love this.
I do too.
Right. So you kind of, it's funny because you compared it a little bit to Sicily. but meaner. Because Sicily, at least, when the tile goes, I want to say Tramontane, I know that's not right.
No.
When that tile goes, it still goes back to the basic tile, and then you just can start laying it again. It doesn't cost you anything. But you have to completely rebuild $160 worth of track in order to reconnect up to Havana, because it totally decimates, that Route 1 overpass to get all the way down there. That's
those
rough.
Two $80 tiles, right? They just go bye-bye on the 6 train. Yeah, on a gray train, because there's two gray trains. Yeah. And then you got to rebuild it again if you want it. It's like the volcano blowing up in 49, only worse.
Yeah, I think so, because it's really holding back revenue. And if you are the company, which is the Florida Atlantic line that has Miami to start with, they need that revenue. There's also a doink there, which we'll talk a little bit about in trains, but they're greedy trains, so they pick up doinks for free, like Mexico. So, it's really early game that's a $70 or $110 late game. So anytime you're in brown, you need to build that. You have to. You have no choice.
One thing that I think is really cool about these 2 tiles and the hurricane and all that kind of stuff is this is a David Hecht game, right? And so those of you who heard our interview with David Hecht know that history is a big thing to David.
Right.
And in the back of the rule book of this, there's all kind of historical notes and everything. And it's occurring to my head right now that one of the notes is that after that hurricane blew it down, some of the road, the highway that we have today is built using the railroad's pilings and stuff.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh.
So, it's kind of cool.
It is very cool. So, again, like you said, he brings just enough flavor into it, with the tightness and that I think it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of fun building to be done on the map. So, other than that, some of the things to talk about with the tile sets. The tile sets they're very interesting, because I think they're very tight early on. Like, not thinking that you necessarily run out of things, but like, for instance, there's no tight turns at all in the initial yellow set, which will catch you out at some point because you really want that turn. There's a yellow tight turn with a doink, sure, a town, but not a plain one. So you can't just zigzag everywhere, which you have to take in consideration. And then the upgrade paths for some of them are, because there's so many tiles that have 2 sides that border water, there's a lot of tiles that just cannot be built. You can't upgrade Mobile past green because there's no K that's in brown. So it's just not possible. And even that, where it is, it's kind of a stretch to even get that in there. They kind of had to put 2 little doinks just to make the tile set work off the end of it. So, very interesting little things that I find very fun. Yeah. But then beef that up a little bit later in the game, and then the tile the tile set almost opens up, and then so you find yourself upgrading tiles deep into the game. You're not just locking in runs. You're trying to build those workarounds, and the tiles are there for you to do it. So it actually feels less restrictive the deeper you play.
Yeah, I agree, but I feel like it takes a little longer than in normal games.
Yes.
to get into that, because the tile set is Lawsonian. Mm-hmm. So a green upgrade has only 3 exits, not 4, right? And so you don't have quite all the links that you want. But as you're digging in and building the tracks, those workarounds, right? Mm-hmm. The Lawson track, kind of helps do that. And at the end, in the closing, rounds of several of our games, you could actually run a 4 train from New Orleans all the way around the track to Havana.
Yeah.
Now you're having to go around a lot of stuff. So because, tokens.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it's fun to build track on this map.
It really is. It's and again, building it late, and you are, it's because our runs were changing, and in the game we just played, our runs were still changing in the last OR after the bank broke. Like, they were still upgrading because you can upgrade towns, you can upgrade, there are things to be done that give you those extra few dollars, because there was literally one time where I did an upgrade to one, and it was just enough to make a double jump. So, you want to do those things, which I think is a great segue to stock market, right?
All right. Yeah.
Since we're still in yellow, the stock market it's nothing crazy. If you've played 46, it should look very familiar, behaves very familiar, with one exception. There's only double jumps. We're not getting trips and quads out of this one, which conceivably mid-game you could pull off with some really good track. But, still nice big jumps. It's a lot of fun to be able to do some double jumps with that. I'm really coming to love the 1D market. That didn't used to be one of my favorite things, but now I'm really starting to enjoy that, because that seems to be a common thing with the 1D, is that, it tends to have the double jumps. Since they can't go up and over for things, it'll do double jumps. So I find that very fun.
I like that stock market too. I like that there's a line, right, that 5-share companies can't cross.
Yeah.
So they'll just like bump up against that, make you grow up, and eventually they'll all grow up anyway. But one thing about this market is it's short. Right. It's not as long, like 1846 is this long and this one's like this long, right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of difference between the spaces. You know what I mean? Like percentage wise, you gain value quicker than in a lot of games. And
bigger strides.
One of the effects of that market is sometimes, like, I'll own 60% of this 5-share company. I'll grow up. Now I only own 30%. And the shares will be so pricey, I might not be able to get to 60% of this company again for some time.
Yeah.
And people might buy shares if it's, a good company and stuff. And you could see some share ownership percentages that you don't often see. Yeah. Where it might not be 60, 20, 20, or, like I might be running this company at 40%, right?
Right. In our game that we just played, you decided to grow both yours up, one that you just opened and another one. And you're like, that's it. I want to get the money, so I have some flex now, which actually worked out really well for you, because at that point you were in the lead. Right. But I kind of did I'm going to wait to grow up the new one, but I need cash in the established one. So I grew that one up, which gave me train money and allowed me to buy a permanent. So it was, it kind of made sense for me to do it that way. And
I normally take my time to grow up later for more money. But this time I was like, you know what? I'm just going to grow these two companies up and just have the money and see if I can make any hay with having early money and, more trains up front. But I think it actually cost me a little bit to do both of those companies, because I didn't have the big money for the big train.
Right. Which, the last thing I want to talk about, and then we're going to get into said trains, because the train roster is funky and interesting as well. But, growing up companies is probably the easiest growth merger kind of those games. I think this is by far the easiest I've ever seen. You literally just get 5 more shares and you get 5 times their value in the company, and you're done. You don't have to adjust your stock price. You don't have to change how many shares you have. Your share count and everybody else's stays exactly the same. So it's almost like a stock split, right? More than a growth. It's almost like that's happening when you choose, which sometimes we play these games and it's kind of like you got to be a mental gymnast, and then the spot you need for the value isn't on the board, so you lose $10 because it's not there.
Right.
Right. None of that. It's just boom. You were at $100. You get $500 in your treasury. You get 5 more shares into your company IPO. That's it. Done. So again, I think that's all kind of helps really keep things moving along, which is what I think, this game does really well. Speaking of moving along, what's better vehicle for moving you along than a train? So
there is no better vehicle.
There is no, right? I don't think so.
No better conveyance.
So let's move on to the green phase. So the green phase, we're going to talk about the trains. The roster in this one is literally 5 train cards. That's it. There are 6 trains on offer, but it's not a lot. There's no, you don't have to go crazy. And the 4s, you said this at the beginning of our game, and I totally forgot about it. 4s are permanent.
Yeah.
So you deal with a poison 3, not a poison 4 this time, which again kind of speeds the urgency of this game up and kind of helps us get into it a little faster.
Yeah.
Pretty standard roster as far as there's a 2, a 3, a 4, and a 5, and then after that, the gray phase is represented by a 6/3E, and you can take it as either when you get it. Right? Yeah, it's a double-sided one in real life. The interesting things, we mentioned it earlier, the trees pick up doinks for free. Doinks, dits, towns, ticks, whatever you call them. It gets those for free along its route, which I think is, I love games that do that, because I am the guy who's building track that is just kind of snaking through all that stuff. Now, in this game, that does hurt you a little bit, because token costs are paid by track length, not as the crow flies. So that will bite you in the bud, where one token should have cost me literally $60, cost me 120 because I did my shenanigans. So I'm just kind of building the snake. Much necessary token, I might add. It was a choice that had to be done. So, very cool. And then the 3E is very cool because it's a doubler and ignores ticks, doinks, towns, and dits. So you don't get those, but you get 3 consecutive cities doubled, which in this game, if you have one good token, chances are you're going to make bank with that. You just need one. Like if it's in Jacksonville or Tampa, or right next to one of the big off boards like Havana or something.
Havana,
right?
You do Havana, Miami, and something else good. That's pretty sexy.
Ooh. And that's a beast. It's an absolute beast.
The train deck, you do burn through it a little bit slowly, right?
Right.
Because you can only buy one train of a type per OR. So I can get the last 2 in the first 3, but I can never get 2 2s or 2 3s.
Right. Which is, again, I think this kind of goes back to, how the game is set up to be a very slow kind of out of the gate, but then it kind of really, I think, gains a lot of speed and ramps up later in the game.
So I want to ask you about the rush, right? Because I don't feel like there's a rush, but even though we're saying the word slow, it's not a drag either.
Right.
It's somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, I think I think it's more of a curve, right? Because I think it starts very slow whenever you can only get 1-2 train, 1-2 train. And then maybe you go into a stock round, you come back out and everybody else buys another 2 train. And then maybe somebody's poised to open another company and then the 3s are out, right? I think, but that whole process it's very comfortable. It's helping you get track built. It's helping you kind of envision what's around the corner. I think a lot of times when we play these games, there's a struggle to try and get the first two trains so that you can get 2 routes right out of the gate. And, I think this game doesn't say you have to do that. It says maybe by the 3rd OR you want to have that, but it's not like you have to be running from 2 stations right in OR2. I don't feel that press that I think a train rush kind of drives. Does that make sense?
I don't know. I mean, I definitely want to run two trains as fast as I can.
Yeah. But I just don't feel it's as necessary in this game as it is, say, in a lot of other big ones, where I think you have to be running them out of the gate. I think here, if you buy one, hold off on the second one and go for a 3, I don't think that's going to kill you in this game like it will a lot of others. Is really what I'm trying to get at.
Okay. Not all the companies are set up to even run 2-2 trains, right? Like the company you started first today.
Yeah.
Out of Jacksonville, right?
It takes me 2 turns just to get to another city.
The Seaboard Atlantic, yeah. Like you only want 1-2 train, really.
Yeah, it was really hard. Now, I mean, so Jacksonville has 2 companies in it, the SR, the Southern Railway, and the Seaboard Airline. And I've always kind of liked the Seaboard. I've always thought it's a neat company. And, maybe in retrospect, it wasn't the right thing because the SR has a Jacksonville to Savannah run right out of the gate. So you could have been making more money, but you're not going to get all of the towns and hotel potential because we haven't talked about that yet.
But we should in trains.
Yep, because it's a huge part of why you want, maybe not want the 3E and you want to have a 6T or a 5T over that because maybe your route is better for that. So why don't you tell us about the hotels, Tony? Because
okay, sure.
I think they're pretty cool.
Yeah, I do too, man. I think they're cool. They're definitely, to my knowledge, a unique feature of 18xx games that's in this game. I've not encountered this in any other, but your companies all have 4 stations. One's your home station, and you got 3 discretionary stations. They can either be played as railroad stations, or on the reverse side, you play them as a hotel. And a hotel is just going to give you a bonus to a doink, to a town, because you play hotel tokens in towns. And they don't count as a rail station because they're not a rail station. They're actually a hotel. And so the doink is going to be plus 10 at the beginning of the game and plus 20 in the later half of the game. Plus the brown doinks are worth 20. So you could have a $40 stop that doesn't even count against your train limit, right? Against your train length.
Yep.
By building these hotels.
Right, because so Tix, getting back to Tix upgrade and we'll pay $20 in brown. So right. You add 20 to 20, and you can make $40 a stop.
So like if you're building hotels, you don't want an express train because that's just going to whiz right by the hotels, right? So like what you're building on the map might affect what kind of end state trains that you're interested in as well.
Right. Yeah, it was a lot of fun to be able to run a 2 train and pick up 4 towns for $40 each, and for $40 total, and then add a hotel for $20, and then add another hotel for $40, because they also don't count for stationing, right? Like you can't just keep leapfrogging out; it doesn't work that way. Hotels, while they use station markers, are not station markers, like you said. So,
which means you're not going to be tokening as many cities either. That has an impact here too.
And then, you tend to see people do one or the other, or maybe like if there's a cheap token that's right next to the city that you always run from, yeah, you'll drop a hotel there just because it's cheap, it's easy, and it's free money. 1 visit, 2 visits, and you've already paid for it. So why bother, right? It's an easy $20 decision. But, people tend to, they'll take one company and they'll just go hotel crazy. And maybe that's what I did. I built 2 and then I just got 1 token. And, just kept hammering it and then upgrading. And then in brown, they're not worth $10. They're now worth $20. Right? And then you can upgrade your tiles to brown and make that now worth 20 plus 20. So you could be making $40 free doinks,
yeah.
Free pickups. Why would you not do that?
This afternoon, you were definitely the hotel king of Florida.
I was, because both my companies had 2 hotels maxed out and upgraded all their track.
Tiles, yeah, man.
Yeah. I mean, but that was bank. So, a lot of fun. But, sometimes people are not doing that. And I think the Southern people have trouble with it because, there's not a lot of towns around there. There's only 1 or 2 that are nearby where they are. And they also have to pay a lot more to get out. right? Because they tend to have to pay for the Everglades and things like that. So I don't see them usually do hotels like I do the people up in the northeast corner.
Yeah. Yeah, look at that. Look at that along the coast there out of Jacksonville. It's crazy.
I had this run. I'm drawing it on the map.
Hoteled up.
Yeah, and one of the fun things was I was able to do that in OR2 and then run it because, I had this done in one, this done in one, this was done in OR2, this was done in 2, and then that private I picked allowed me that extra yellow, which Tony was happy to point out. Because it gave him the connection into Jacksonville as well. Which, he's like, hey, you can use that. So you just use it.
Didn't have any hotels on that route because you can only have one hotel per town.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Nobody did, which I found very odd because I know a lot of people were running that track. Because why would you not run a track that would give you 40 plus Jacksonville? Nobody else built a hotel on there, and it.
I started the Atlantic there in Tampa, and I put all my tokens in cities. Yeah, and had just an amazing route. Jacksonville to Havana, but didn't work out all that well for me.
And not easy to do because again, you're paying by the track length, and it gets expensive. And of course, I made it expensive because if you wanted to get up to Jacksonville, which you never were able to. Because I made it very expensive for you to have to place that token by making that snake track out there. So, the trains are fun. It's easy to get. I don't want to say it's super easy to get permanents, but I think it's not hard, right? Like if you time your grow up well, you can get $450 in your company with a $90 company is not unreasonable. Boom, you got 4 train money, 50 more bucks, you got 5 train money, and you both are permanent. So you have a deep running company that you don't have to stress about. The hotels, I think, are a blast. And I love the decision, right, that you have to make. Like I really, if I could just drop another hotel, but now this is my forever run because I can never add another.
We got 3.
That's it. So, the hotels, I think, are most certainly a shenanigan, which I think is a great place to kind of jump into the shenanigan portions of our conversation.
Yeah, there's not a ton of shenanigans in this game. I don't think I've ever seen a company dumped in this game or anything. There's only 6 companies.
Right.
It's not really a shenanigan game, but, one that I feel could be shenanigan-y is that teleporting token private company.
Oh, certainly.
That lets you weasel a token in on a tight map somewhere without a rail connection and all that kind of stuff, free. So it's pretty huge. But it's an expensive private, right? It costs $70, and that's $70 of your initial cash, right? Early money's important.
Right, because it means that whatever company that you're going to open is not going to be super well funded, right? Because you're only going to be able to open around $70 usually.
You're going to have to pick a lower par.
Yeah. Love it. The teleporter, it's classic and it works, but I like how this one is, it can go anywhere and it can kind of bust through whatever's there. Like I like that feature of the teleporter, not just if there's an available hole, you can go in. You can just go anywhere you want.
Sidecar.
I think that there is a little bit of a shenanigan, and it might be a stretch of a term, but definitely kind of a function of the 2D stock market is I don't think it penalizes you that much for making a hold, right? So I think you can take a hold, fall back 1, but then if the train you just bought is good enough, you should be able to double jump at least for a little while to well recuperate that money. So I think that's just a function of a 1D stock market that, you can leverage pretty effectively. So
agreed.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't see it use the huge effect early on in the game, but later some strategic holds caused Kelly to just start on a tear at the end of the game we just played because he was able to get some really solid trains in his companies and then just run and go crazy. I happen to have some shares paying into the market. Thank you, Tony. That
Yeah, you're welcome.
when you're paying out $80 a round was quickly became enough money to buy a fourth permanent in 2 companies. So it was a nice benefit.
Maybe growing up is a shenanigan because you get to decide when to do it.
Yeah.
Until somebody buys the 5 train, right? And then everybody has to grow up. And that even plays into what you're saying about the withholding.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen players, and I did it today. I withheld one time just so that I wouldn't double jump and make my shares so expensive that I couldn't afford more shares after I grew up. Right? So I had the benefit of putting some cash in my company. I was able to double jump the next turn. Right, so kind of makes up for that. But then I was able to buy some paper in the stock round because my company wasn't, out of my reach in terms of buying more shares because I just cut my holdings from 60 to 30%.
Yeah, and it goes back to what you were saying about the stock market. As soon as you get above, like, what is it? When you close in on like the mid hundreds, like 150, 120, I think it was 125 to 150, and the jumps just get.
Well, there's a 140 and a 160. Yeah, it gets.
They start to ramp up in the mid hundreds very quickly, and if you're poised for your company to grow up, and you can easily outpace yourself in your cash flow, which that's usually a problem because chances are you just bought a really good train, and now you might be vulnerable. And I think that there were opportunities for people to steal companies today. But there were certainly, but I think it's at the cost of losing your own. And I think that is, it's kind of a detractor, right? Because you're like, well, I can totally take that over, but I'm gonna have to risk losing one of mine. And then I've seen that kind of de-escalate as everybody starts like basically exchanging companies, right?
Yeah.
Just killing everybody's share value and exchanging companies.
After I grew up my 2 companies, and we went into that stock round, I owned 3 of each of those companies. And they both had a 4T in there. Of my best company, Kelly owned 2.
Uh-huh.
He chose to do some other things, but I could not have defended both of those. And I even reminded him, like, Kelly, I can't defend both of those companies.
Yeah.
But he chose to go a different route. But, my best company at the end of the game, I had 5, I think, and Kelly had 3 and you had 2 or something like that, right? Like, the game leads to these more balanced ownership. It's not always like I own all of just my companies and you own all of your just companies.
Right. You still go out and buy a few shares. It definitely is. I think it's kind of tricky to figure out if it's worth it, right? Like that's one of the reasons, like I did not grow up both my companies at the exact same time because I'm like, I had permanent trains in both of them. And I'm like, well, I can only buy 2 shares of something. So I chose to grow up one and stall the other one. That way, you're still getting paid 60% on your shares.
Yeah.
But now I'm at least majority stockholder in both my companies. So definite downside if you get caught napping. Don't get caught. So pretty cool. Something you have to watch for is growing up, but I think the timing of that, like you said, is very cool because, I think it's very easy to kind of forget that somebody has or hasn't grown up. And then all of a sudden they get like a 4, 5 or more $100 infusion of cash. And all of a sudden the things you were banking on, the trains you expected to get purchased, doesn't happen. Doesn't happen. So
time to make lemonade.
Yeah, it's an interesting element. So cool. So like we said, not a lot of shenanigans in this one, but I think a lot of fun stuff and a lot of buttons to play with, So let's move on to the gray phase. Gotta push the right buttons here, people. The feels. So I'll kind of lead off since I kind of have already been going on and on and on. I think it's pretty obvious to say that I really enjoy this game. I think it's one of the better school night games because it's one of those that you can play back to back. It's also one of those games I think that really, I don't think you know the leader and the winner is exactly what you expect it'll be when you get into the later phases of the games. Because I think people can do things that can really change their position pretty easily. So I love the fact that it's a game you are playing right up to the very end. Because, okay, maybe the winner is known, okay, but I guarantee you there's a couple places that are not, So I think it's fun to be able to see all those kind of things and kind of see those final numbers and see how that person caught up or whatnot. So I enjoy it for what it is. I love the tightness of it. I think that that's fun. And that tension ramp that I was talking about are probably the two big keys for me, and
Nice.
I seem to love hotels for some reason. I don't know. It's just, maybe it's the restaurateur in me that just likes hotels. I don't know. So
Maybe
that's my feels. Yeah.
Maybe you have some hotel ownership and management in your future.
I don't want to own stuff. It's a lot of work, a lot of responsibility. All right, so Tony, what are your thoughts on this classic Hecht?
Well, I want to, before I tell you how I feel about the game, I want to talk about something that David put in the rules at the end about what his goal was. And his goal here, I got my note here,
nice,
was to create a good introductory game. And he defines that as simple to explain and play, interesting and relatively short. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, he says that his first attempt at this was 18 VA. And he says he doesn't think that was successful because the game had more complications in it than he wanted.
The coal mines and things,
complex rules, right?
Yeah, I get that.
And then I guess maybe the same thing with Scan, right?
Yeah.
There's some different things going on in Scandinavia, minor companies and all that kind of stuff. So, my opinion on, anything's an introductory game, but I get what he's saying here.
Right.
I think this is a fine intro game and beyond, there is some complexity. There's 5 share companies and they have to grow up and stuff, but it's pretty basic game other than that.
Right.
I think that this is a better game of this level than some of the other state games like Georgia and Alabama, right? Those are, to me, just so vanilla, just so plain.
Yeah. You could dump Tennessee and Mississippi in there too, I think.
Yeah. Just,
very vanilla. They could almost be like the same game, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, Tone, you want to play ALGL or FL? FL?
Yeah.
11 out of 10 times I will choose FL, right? Yeah, so I think that I think David finally, if if he's had all these in his mind unsuccessful attempts at making an introductory game, that I think that he met his stated goals with Florida, because I do think it is simple to explain and play. Mm-hmm. It is interesting and it is short.
Yeah.
And so that's why I like 18 Florida, right? Like, this isn't a brain burner, by any means, but that doesn't mean it's not a good game. And, like I say, the odd shape of the map captivated me from the start. The hotels are a neat feature. The school night length of the game is cool. I think that as long as we don't, I've got 8 plays of it. I think as long as I don't get 8 more in relatively short time, that I won't, burn out on this game, right? Because it's not, like I said, it's not like super interesting. There's not like great, shenanigans and stuff going on. This is a very good, solid little school night game that I enjoy playing as long as I don't overplay it.
I think that's fair. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just glad to have a copy, really.
Yeah, same here. I certainly, I echo your sentiments that it's that really nice game that isn't like, you can explain it to somebody who has a core understanding very quickly, because there's a few neat things, but they're not so crazy and far-fetched. It's very easy to relate to them. And watch people light up when you tell them the 4 trains are permanent, because that's always fun. Cool. So yeah, I think
I like it when the 4 trains die.
Yeah, I was able to get a copy made of this one, and I'm very glad. I can't wait to actually play the physical version now.
It's cool. Of my 8 plays, 4 are online and 4 are physical. So
nice. There you go. Much better than me, but this is to be expected. You have a great game group, so you're a lucky man. All right, so priority deal markers. So we're talking Florida, we're talking Sunshine State. What would your priority deal marker be for this, Tony?
I don't have a custom one for this, but I did put some thought into that. I mean, it's Florida, and the box cover features oranges.
Okay.
Right? So I was thinking, if you have oranges in the house, you can just grab an orange, and then the winner gets to eat the orange.
Okay, I can live with that.
The model homes that, when they're selling model homes, you go in there and there's like fake fruit and stuff. You can just get some fake oranges.
Yeah, you know what? A clementine might even fit in the box.
A fake clementine.
Not responsible if you leave a real one in there, people.
Right. Everything's laminated. It'll be fine.
Yeah, exactly.
No.
I don't have anything for this. Again, I literally just made it, so I haven't even thought about it yet. I think I have a palm tree thing somewhere that I might use.
Ooh.
Oh, that could work. Might be small enough, but we'll see. There's palm trees all over the map, so I think it would make sense.
That's a good one, man.
So this was a lot of fun, and with this episode, we kiss 2020, give it the finger, do whatever we do to it as we are wrapping up this year. Yeah, exactly.
I'm holding up a finger back here.
Oh man, if for nothing else than the killing of our in-person gaming. I think I can live with everything else that's happened, but the killing of in-person gaming, aside from a great wife who will play very heavy games and good games with me, not train games, but good games. Yeah, I miss it. I was okay for a while, but now I'm really starting to miss it. So, all right. So,
well, Chris, I do want to wish you and our viewers Merry Christmas.
Yes, we are approaching the season. It may be December 1st, but the season's here. It isn't Christmas until Hans Gruber falls from Nakatomi Plaza. In my opinion, I'm one of those diehard believers.
Yeah. Well, yes, and I love your shirt.
Yes.
In spite of me doing this to 2020, right? Like we just passed up Thanksgiving.
Right.
This episode comes out, and there are things to be thankful for still in 2020, in spite of all of our struggles, and that should not also tarnish our holiday season at the end of this year too.
Absolutely.
There's things out there. Look for them, people.
Yeah, and if any one thing, and we've said this amongst our group, if it's done, I think it's done great things for us to be able to play online. If you listen to our COVID special way back April now, my goodness, Tony had never played online, async or anything because he just didn't want to be bothered. But here we sit having regular games, broadcasting them regularly for you all. And, I love looking forward to our Monday night games. I love it.
Absolutely.
So,
I'm opening up my spreadsheet here, and today's game was my 85th online game. None of them async, but all since the pandemic began.
Yeah, exactly. So, I'm thankful that, I got to really get to know, a few more characters, out there, like Nick, yourself, got to play with Mike, Todd, got Kelly involved. So it's
Kelly, Joe, Jeroen, we've played with so many guys.
So many. So it's definitely been, a mixed bag for sure. But, here's hoping that, tracks in some form next year may be able to happen. That even if it's just a little small executive meeting, I don't know. get the board together. We'll see what happens.
That's right.
Cool. All right. Well, everyone, have a great Christmas. Enjoy your New Year. And I guess the next episode you're going to hear from us will be New Year's Day in 2021. Nice. So, see you then. This Week in Each Week is brought to you by Game Toppers. Check out a great mat or game topper at GameToppersLLC.com. Tony and I would like to give a special shout out to all the patrons who support the show. Thank you for listening, supporting, and taking care of us. You can also help us out if you want a shirt. Be sure to check us out on Teespring.
Punchboard Media, where we all
bring something
to the table.
Pull up a chair
at punchboardmedia.com.